Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ben, and I am Chief Operating Officer at the Hope for Us Network. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to Vicky, Laura, Sebastian, and Roger for being here today. And thank you, of course, to Carl. For this segment of Art Gives Us Hope, I have the distinct pleasure of connecting with four incredible individuals from Sound Mind, an NPO here in Chicago associated with the Civic Orchestra of Chicago. Sound Mind has the mission of ending the stigma around mental health in the classical music world. Network, if we could teleport these amazing individuals up on screen, we'll start with some intros. Excellent. So good to see you all. Alex,
Thank you for
Kevin,
having us.
Bethany, and Dan.
Hi, good to be here.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello there. Alex, if you'd like to kick things off, I believe you have an intro for us. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I do. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Alex, co-founder and executive director of Sound Mind. I'll let my teammates introduce themselves before I kind of jump in. So, Kevin, let's go to you first.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Gupana. I am the vice chair of the board of Sound Mind. Bethany,
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Monty. I'm the program director at Sound Mind, and I'm a musician and educator in Southeast Massachusetts.
And I'm Bethany. I am a classical violist in the Chicago area, and I'm on the development team at Sound Mind.
Awesome. I guess I should also add that I do play the flute. I currently play in the New World Symphony down in Miami Beach. Very different weather here than in Chicago right now, I can imagine. So as Ben said, thank you for the intro. Our mission at Sound Mind is to end the stigma surrounding mental health in the classical music world. And we try to empower musicians to be vulnerable and hold space for one another through open conversations about mental wellness. I do want to talk a little bit about Sound Mind before we jump into the performance, just in terms of what we've been up to, what we do. So we started in 2019 through the Civic Orchestra of Chicago, which is a training orchestra that works with the Chicago Symphony. Me and my two other co-founders had talked about mental health a lot. And in the Civic Orchestra, we are given the opportunity to pursue independent projects. So we knew we wanted to do something with mental health and music just based on our own experience in the field. And initially, we organized a panel of professional musicians and mental health professionals to talk on a panel about mental wellness in the classical music field specifically. And we also wanted to make sure that we commissioned a new work as well around mental health, because that is also really important to us. That event was initially scheduled for May of 2020, so naturally it did not happen. And we took everything virtual. We decided to interview those panelists. And now that has become a podcast where we interview so many different kinds of people to talk about all sorts of things, mental health and music. We also have a blog that our community members contribute to. Once a month, we have virtual gatherings that were called coffee tables. They're now called social hours. They're informal. The idea is bring a drink, bring a friend, let's talk about mental health. We've covered topics from medication to therapy to practicing as it relates to music. And they're just a really good way for the community to get together and have these informal discussions. Something we're also working on right now is giving workshops to musical organizations around a lot of different topics, specifically holding space, which we're going to talk about later today, as well as identity, reframing failure, and redefining success. So we've been up to a lot of things, as you can see. We're going to show you a piece shortly written by Matt Pellegrino. This was the piece that we commissioned for our panel back in June. It's titled Anxiety Cycles. Commissioning music is really important to us. It gives people, number one, a voice to express themselves in a different way. We want there to be more art in the world that has to do with mental health, and this is another great way to do that. And it was really fun. You'll see Bethany and myself playing in the video, and Matt will talk about the piece a little bit on the video as well, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Cool. Well, network, if you'd like to cue the piece, if that's cool with you all, then let's go ahead.
Hi there. My name is Matt Pellegrino, and I'm the composer behind the music that you're going to be hearing today. This work was commissioned by Sound Mind of the Civic Orchestra of Chicago, actually about a year ago. The initial idea was for us to create this piece about mental health, which is something that we all feel very strongly about advocating for in the arts. I decided to write a piece about anxiety, which I would only fully grasp the irony of about a year later, now, at the piece's completion. As I sat through this piece during the pandemic, I contemplated the nature of anxiety, which to me really feels a lot like a cycle, something that you get trapped in and you feel stuck. So I decided to use music and sounds that emulate this. For the sound, I decided to mimic a storm that passes by and ultimately gives way to something a bit more comforting. And for the style of the work, I decided to go with cyclical forms, specifically a chaconne. I used the chaconne throughout the piece to utilize the repetition to create that cyclical idea, while also forming the warm ending at the end of the work that I hope you'll hear through the incredible performance of the musicians. Everyone here did outstanding, and I was so happy to be a part of this all, and I hope that you'll enjoy every minute of today's program. Thank you for tuning in.
It's been a while since we listened to that. Bethany and I were just talking about it. It's nice to hear it again after, like 6 months of not hearing it. So that was a lot of fun.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It was such a joy to work with Matt throughout that whole process. He was so patient. We commissioned him before the pandemic, and then obviously that happened, and then he still agreed to do it, and he just wrote something so beautiful that we have in our repertoire now forever, and I hope we get to play it again.
I hope to hear it again, and I hope to hear other things that Matt writes in the future. It evoked anxiety and the warmth after anxiety. If we're so lucky that comes, it evoked that so incredibly.
Yeah, I agree. I think he did a great job.
I believe, Alex, y'all have some wisdom to share about holding space.
Yeah.
If you'd like to jump into that, please.
I would love to. Yeah. So, one of the things that we talk a lot about at our organization is this concept of holding space. And holding space, I'm wondering if I'm going to try. Do I have to share my whole screen? Okay, maybe not. I might not do it. Holding space is defined as creating the environment to practice empathy and to validate the full humanity of the person who is sharing with you. It's key in being a supportive friend, colleague, and human. It means bearing witness to and allowing someone to completely feel their emotions while being entirely present, refraining from judgment, or offering unsolicited advice or solutions. There's a lot in that. There are 3 parts to holding space that I want to talk a little bit about. There's consent, boundaries, and fostering vulnerability. So consent plays an enormous role in this because holding space requires mental energy. Because when you're holding space, you're being entirely present, you're listening very carefully, and you're making an effort to place yourself in somebody else's shoes. If you don't have the emotional energy or bandwidth to effectively hold space for another person, it's likely that that person's not going to get what they need from you. And it's also likely you might overextend yourself and give more than you realistically can. It's okay to say no to holding space or to say maybe later. It's not personal. It's a boundary that's set in order to respect the needs of both people. That's why this is key for holding space to be consensual, which goes into boundaries. And if at any point anybody has a question in the comments, let me know and I will try to respond to them. Okay. So boundaries, these are safeguards for sustainable long-term relationships, whether they're friendships, professional relationships, our relationships as musicians with our instruments and with our work. It's not a way to control other people or a lack of caring for somebody. They actually help us manage and protect our energy. And setting boundaries for many people can be difficult because it might feel like you're separating yourself from other people or from the things we love. I know I personally have had to work on this quite a bit. Using if-then statements are a great way to communicate a boundary because it maintains your own agency over your needs and emotions. So, for example, I have a 24-hour rule. I try to give myself 24 hours to say yes to something. I tend to get really excited about new opportunities and want to say yes instantly, but that 24-hour rule just lets me evaluate whether I actually have the bandwidth for whatever I'm being asked to do. Over the summer, I found myself getting into a bad habit of overcommitting myself to friends over the weekend. And then I get to the end of the week, I'm exhausted and I just want time alone. And then I cancel on my friends, they're upset, and nobody felt particularly good about it. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about burnout later and how that relates as well. The final piece in the definition of holding space is fostering vulnerability. So instead of asking, "How are you?" something that our team loves to ask at the beginning of every meeting that we give is, "How's your head and how's your heart?" We started using this to make it more accessible for people to answer how they're doing in an honest way. You can use this question as a starting point to have a more genuine conversation. and acknowledge that when somebody asks you how your head and heart are, they're asking because they care to know how you're really doing. Anything that anybody on the team wants to add before I go on?
No,
Okay,
I
great.
think you're quite nailing it.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. So here's some examples of holding space and what it looks like and setting boundaries. So, for example, if a person says, "Hey, I'm really struggling today and I would love to talk it through with you. Do you have space for that right now or sometime later today?" So that's the step, asking for consent. Person number 2 might set a boundary and say, "Hey, thank you so much for reaching out. I don't have time right at this moment, but I'm free later today." So that's an effective example of how to hold space for yourself and for another person. Another way to hold space for yourself is I've practiced my instrument for 3 hours today and I'm absolutely exhausted. And instead of staying up late to cram and try to practice more, I'm going to get some sleep and I'm going to try again tomorrow. By setting the limit on the amount of time you've spent on something, you'll actually increase your productivity and it'll give you a feeling of completion. And that feeling of completion is a huge factor in our workaholic profession. The work is never done, so we think it's okay to never stop working. So when we don't hold space for ourselves, this is what leads to burnout. It's not forgiving yourself and denying yourself rest can lead to really destructive thought patterns. Not resting will inevitably cause a decrease in ability and productivity. So in either case, the inability to hold space for yourself will cause you to respond with feelings of inadequacy or guilt for not living up to your expectations and prior standards and cause yourself to push yourself even harder, which only exacerbates the problem. Another thing worth thinking about is that invalidating your own feelings leads to a lack of self-trust. If you don't listen to your brain and your body when you're tired or sad or overwhelmed, it's really easy to condition yourself to not trust the feedback that your brain and body are giving you. And this leads into injury, which is something that's pretty common in our profession. Lots of people experience some kind of physical ailment or full-on injury that might prevent them from playing entirely. So I'm going to share my brief story with it. So when I was a sophomore in my undergraduate degree, I was juggling around a dozen classes. I was in the marching band, I was in a sorority, and I was playing in every single performance that I could get my hands on. And there was one week in particular that I'll never forget because I had 5 performances in 7 days. At the beginning of the week, I started feeling a tingling in my elbows and my hands, and it only got worse as each performance finished. My final performance that week, we played Beethoven 4. I'll never forget it. Afterwards, I walked off stage and burst into tears because I couldn't bend my elbows without extreme pain. I immediately went into physical therapy and was told that I had pinched both ulnar nerves in my elbows. And this is pretty similar to golf elbow, if anybody's familiar with that. I could barely hold up my instrument. I even switched to playing the piccolo full time, which is just slightly smaller. I switched out of the top ensemble at school. I had to say no to a bunch of performances, and I had to do physical therapy twice a week for about 3 months. It was not fun. And I made that mistake of pushing through pain, and it only got worse. So I really do believe in the power of setting those boundaries for yourself and not pushing through pain. When we don't hold space for others, it can lead to isolation, repression of emotions, and perpetuating negative thought patterns. So with isolation, the person who's looking for support can end up feeling more isolated than before if they're met with things like dismissiveness, invalidation, or end up feeling like they weren't heard. With repression of emotions, sometimes when we jump into offering solutions when a person isn't in a place where that's helpful, they're more inclined to repress their emotions or not reach out for help in the future. So an example of this is one person saying, "My teacher was so mean in my lesson today, I don't think I deserved it." And the other person responding with, "Have you considered sticking up for yourself? Have you tried talking to them directly? Have you thought about talking to the dean?" This assumes that the person wants to confront their teacher, which could potentially make the situation worse. And instead, you could try in response, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. Do you want to vent or do you want to talk through what to do? Or just asking the question, how can I support you right now? This is a really important question that I try to use in conversation whenever I can when somebody comes to me with a problem. The person in that moment might not know what they need. They might not know if they want to vent or not. And in that case, that's okay too. But the fact that you asked is still a really big deal. Perpetuating negative thought patterns. Ultimately, failure to hold space can result in perpetuating these negative thought patterns and behaviors instead of acknowledging them and counteracting them. And holding space can be a difficult task, and it's something we have to practice. Oh, my dog just found the loudest toy in his toy box. But if we develop intention around holding space, we can show up for one another better than we ever have before. So I just talked a lot. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts on holding space? I'm seeing some of the comments and they're great.
I'll jump in. Yeah, holding space. I love that we talk about this in our organization. I was talking to a great mentor of mine who is a hospital chaplain, and he coaches people through their process of death. People who are dying, he sits with them and helps them be an active participant in their own death. And he was also a chair of a music department formerly in his career and a dean of a music school formerly in his career. And he said to me, in all of those jobs, I've done the same work. And I'm like, I can't imagine how being a hospital chaplain and being the dean of a college are even anything similar. But he said, all I do is hold the space and the people work things out themselves. So it's actually awesome. I had a great phone call yesterday. For 3 hours, I reconnected with a buddy who just finished basic training. And he was asking me about relationship advice. And I gave him the best relationship advice I've ever given anyone, which I realized what I was doing was for the first time in my long history of giving advice, I was not telling him what to do. I was like, I don't know what you should do, man. It's not my relationship. But what I did do was sat there and was present with him and gave him my heart for 3 hours. And after I hung up the phone, I realized, I'm like, wow, that's actually the best advice I've ever given anyone. Was no advice at all. And there's a faith researcher. Her name is Simone Weil. I'm not sure if she's still alive or not. But she says that giving someone our presence, giving someone our full being is an absolute miracle. It's present, like it's a present. It's a gift. Like being present with someone is a literal gift. So often we run through the day with a million thoughts in our head. Oh, I have to do this. I got to go pick up the dog. I got to go do this after work. I got to clean the house. I got to all of this extra stuff. If we can just let go of all of that and be present with someone and live their experience with them, hold space for them, it's a true miracle. And so I'm happy to be engaging in the work here at Sound Mind as we encourage others to do this. I always remind myself when I'm holding space for someone, I'm holding space for all of humanity. When I'm allowing someone to be the biggest version of themselves, I'm making the world a better place. And that always encourages me to go further. Yeah.
I also want to jump in here and quickly say, sorry. I do want to quickly say, Dan said something that just like kind of struck me, which is that we all kind of tend to go through our days being like, oh, I have to pick up the dog, I have to go on a vacation, I have to do this, I have to do this, and we don't really take the time to settle down into it. And I just want to bring it back to this piece that we played, or that Alex and Bethany performed, Anxiety Cycles by Matt Pellegrino. It's I think I saw in the comments that this is an incredibly evocative. This is incredibly evocative of anxiety, as the composer intended, and I 100% agree. Like I'll exemplify. Actually, quite recently, I had quite the week, and I finally had a chance to jump on a phone call with my dear friend Alex Hoffman, and we had a moment where like we could just let down. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of broke down, and Alex asked me the question of like, how do you want me to support you in this? Do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do this? And I very much just appreciated the fact that she showed that care and that space for me. And there's that moment in the piece at the very end where it's like I think it's the string quartet that kind of like lets down the anxiety. And I honestly thought of that moment. I will be honest. Alex, Bethany, Dan, and I were kind of reflecting on this piece throughout the performance, and I was totally mesmerized because I was thinking about that, and thinking about how holding space, giving space to allow one to express themselves, especially in their art, is so important and so beautiful, and to have that happen in such an uninhibited way is just, it's just incredible. And that's why I think holding space is so important for us at Sound Mind.
You're here. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Dan. It's really profound. And thank you so much, Alex, for the information and holding space in the practice of teaching us about holding space, and reminding us that I don't, in my own terms, right, there's like this audacious simplicity in the act of holding space with somebody. Maybe it's somebody that we're friends with, maybe it's a family, maybe we're in romantic relationship with the person. And a lot of the time we're not taught to have and embody and even think of that kind of like depth. Like you were saying, Kevin, we can be so fractured. We hop from this to that to another thing, and it's easy to forget and not live the fact that we're human beings. So thank you all for that. It's really, really good advice, and I think when we try it ourselves, it really resonates with something that we're not always used to.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when you can really properly hold space for someone and see, be on the receiving end of that, see how they develop, how they mature, how they come into their own when you're holding space for someone, it's not a moment that you want to miss. It is beautiful. It is really beautiful. Even when someone's grieving, and I think about sometimes about just letting air out of the balloon, giving someone an opportunity to let air out of the balloon. You can almost see weights being lifted up off of their shoulders. You can see, a lot of the times you can see physically, their body posture will change. The pitch, the tone of their voice might change. Their speech speed might change. You can quite literally see them. If you do this right, you can quite literally see them transform in front of your eyes. And it is gorgeous. It is a beautiful moment.
I do want to like pose a question to our group here, and it's like, especially as artists, especially because in this situation of art gives us hope, and we're talking about holding space, and I'm going to throw it over to Alex first. Why is holding space so important to us as artists, to help best express ourselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, a lot of people haven't heard of this concept before, holding space. They might be smaller. The parts of it might have been something people have heard of. People have heard of consent, boundaries, but they don't think about it in terms of like a conversation with people. So I think that holding space allows us to better express ourselves by giving us the tools that we need to be mentally well and to create a healthy balance between work and life, which is not something many artists have, I think. In a profession where we put our whole selves on the line in every single performance and everything we do, I think that being able to separate ourselves from our career is pretty essential. And I think that holding space is one step in being able to separate those two things.
I can jump in there unless anybody else would like to. You know, what you mentioned just now in the context of what it sounds like is perfectionism in the context of classical music, is one can become physically injured. You could maybe even become incapacitated, and that could have ramifications, really awful ramifications professionally, personally. And that's not even to mention the emotional ramifications of not holding space for ourselves or how we feel. At the network, we talk about the culture of concealment and the gap between, when, let's say I'm anxious, and then I choose to conceal that anxiety, and it just builds up and builds up, kind of like your hands tingling, Alex, like you were saying.
Oh, yeah.
And then eventually it erupts in panic attacks. We're taught to conceal that until it's too late, right? And that it's this funny thing where, I mean, does anybody want to respond to that right off the bat? Yeah.
I'd take that a step further and said, you said that we're taught to conceal that. I would even say that we are trained, we are conditioned to conceal that and to live under such a way, unless now there are the good news is there's proven ways to help us deal with some of those things. At the end of the day, you can eat I like to say you can eat as much as you want, but you still have to pay the check at the end of the meal. So, and referring to everything that you do is going to have some sort of ripple effect in your life. Some things, the easiest way, I mean, let's face it, the easiest way to deal with an emotion is to repress it, suppress it, or to lash out until enough energy behind the emotion has been released where you can suppress the rest of the energy, right? Harder, and there are many, many ways to escape, drugs or alcohol, any number of addictions, really. Any number of, these are coping skills, all coping skills. Now, there are also other coping skills such as journaling, gratitude practices, right? These are ways that I found. So I'm very big on my journaling practice and my gratitude practice. These are ways in which you can, I pay for my meal as I go along in life. I actually like to think of it, because I'm a musician, I like to think of it like this. That's like your scales and exercises. Journaling and gratitude for me is like doing my scales, and then the performance is daily life. When I'm going in the grocery store and someone erupts at me, whether I hold on to that, to their reaction to me, or whether I'm able to let go of it and move through my day effortlessly, is going to depend on whether I've practiced my scales, whether I've done my journaling practice, whether I've been practicing gratitude. So the good news is there's a way out. I'll tell you though, in my experience, in my 26 years, the way out, the way through, right? I like to say this: you can either go through your problems or you can go around your problems. But here's the thing with going around your problems is you always end up right back. You go around. And so the trickier way in my experience is going through. So do every single night, do I want to journal? No, sometimes I just had like a total crazy blowout video game session and I want to just go right to sleep and like pound a Diet Coke before I go to sleep or something. But then I have to realize, I'm like, okay, is that going to benefit me in the long run? Do I want to put it on my emotional tab? Do I want to put whatever has gone through me throughout the day? Do I want to put that on my emotional credit card, or should I pay as I go here? You know what I mean? Yeah, we're not in control. I think that we think that we have a lot more of control in our lives than we do. I can't control whether the person in the grocery store flips out on me, because maybe maybe they're going through a horrible divorce. I can't control how my private teacher is treating me, because maybe they're fighting a far greater battle, like a drug addiction and an early recovery or something. But what I can control is how I react, how I rather not even react, how I pause and how I respond to those things.
Yeah, and as I personally think about like how I'm even personally reacting to my own life or my own issues, Ben, you were talking about how ignoring something can transform into either the pain in your arm or just even like panic attacks. And I hadn't dealt with panic attacks personally until like the last year of my studies in grad school. And the more that I ignored like how I was not doing well, the more that I had not allowed myself to talk about the issues that I was having, and in fact probably act like there was nothing wrong because I wanted to look strong in my own like educational studio among my colleagues, the more unhealthy I became. I distinctly remember a time where a friend of mine saw me at the end of my grad studies, and they saw me at the beginning of the next summer, and they're like, Kevin, it looks like you. And during that time, I started going to therapy. I started like trying to figure out how to get a handle on the negative thought patterns that were very debilitating, quite honestly. And I to hear the amount of intentional self-care that has to go on to allow yourself to feel physically and mentally well in order to express yourself to the maximum ability, I think speaks volumes to see how that has come to fruition in my life.
Yeah, we were talking about how we're trained maybe to not ask for help, or we're conditioned. And I know Carl talks about this a lot, is this idea of like preventative mental health care, giving people these tools when they're young. I worked for a year for the National Alliance on Mental Illness in their education department, and my job was to, over Zoom, go into like so many classrooms, dozens and dozens, like thousands of students, to teach them about mental health, really basic concepts, or what seemed like basic concepts, but maybe weren't taught to us in school. Teaching them coping skills, teaching them what to look out for in their friends or themselves. And again, things that I think if we had received when we were younger would be maybe in a different place now. So I think it's so important to think about the tools that we give other people in our organization as well.
It's really beautiful, and it's so rare at organizations, for-profit, nonprofit alike. I know that we want to probably let y'all exit right around 4:30. So what I'm wondering is if anybody, Bethany, Alex, Dan, Kevin, if you have anything that you really, really like to close with, any gem, anything that you're looking forward to, anything at all?
I'll pop in here. I'll just quickly say we're so grateful, happy to be here, and we've talked a lot about holding space for ourselves and for one another. So thank you, and thank you to everyone who has been listening in as well, for giving us your attention, your energy, and I hope this has been helpful for you as well. You can find us at on a bunch of different social media places, and you can see our website, soundmindmusician.org. Just a reminder that our Insta tag and whatnot is actually at soundmindmusician. And we would really, really appreciate your support. We have an end of year fundraiser that's going on, a few more days to get that in. We would really appreciate any financial help. We actually also have SoundMind Bingo, because we know not everybody can help out with these things financially. So check out our socials so that you can play bingo along with us as well.
That's absolutely perfect. Can't wait to play bingo with y'all.
My only closing thought is thank you so much to everybody tuning in for the Hope for Us Network. I'm so glad you all exist and really grateful to be part of this festival. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I think Alex may have.
I think we're all dropping out now here.
Oh, snap. Okay.
Don't worry, I'm still here,
is...
but my stand-up act is rusty, so you don't want me to.
Same, but if you have any last words, last comments, please feel free, Dan.
No, I'm just I encourage everyone to check out our Instagram, which is SoundMind Musician, not the one that's listed on the overlay there. Facebook, we have free events all the time. They're super casual. They're a lot of fun. Definitely come to those. We're like dollars short of our end of year goal. So like you could be the one that does the thing for us. But that's all. Yeah. And thanks again so much to you and Carl and the Hope for Us Network for having us. This is such a great event that you all are doing. A Hope Festival. That's so cool. That is so cool. Thank you. You're doing great work.
Thank you, Dan. We feel that way too.
Good.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you both on here. I'm guessing that you'll be talking with Alex and Kevin pretty soon. Please give them my sincerest thanks on behalf of the network.
You got it, of course.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, y'all.
Thank you.